NutriCast.
So where every week we'd come in, and it was the Wild West. You could come in and say whatever you wanted, and there was no system. So this put in okay, we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it, and we're going to do it. No one could come in anymore and just start saying, I'm not doing that anymore. So that alone was 80-20 rule. That was our biggest issue. So that just almost immediately, and then it really EOS is about checking your ego. And that was the biggest thing, because we were three egos that, we're three co-presidents. And I mean, you see all the countries that are run well with three presidents.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
Are you struggling to grow your business while maintaining your sanity? Meet DJ Moore, an entrepreneur who's mastered the art of balancing growth with purpose. In this episode, we dive deep into DJ's journey from corporate burnout to building a multi-million-dollar company. You'll discover how he tackled cash flow issues, implemented game-changing systems, and learned to lead with empathy. DJ shares candid insights on overcoming ego, the power of accountability, and why investing in relationships is crucial for success. Whether you're a seasoned business owner or just starting out, this conversation is packed with practical wisdom that could transform your approach to entrepreneurship. Hey, DJ Moore, thanks for being on the show. How you doing?
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Hey, I'd love to start out with learning two things about you. Actually, three things. I want to learn something on the business side, like what do you do professionally? Something on the personal side that you're into, any type of personal things. And then maybe a little fact that many people may not know about you. So you got three things to start off.
Oh, man. Okay. So professional. So I own a company called Erosion and Construction Solutions. We manufacture and provide services for stormwater pollution prevention plans. So what that is basically is every construction site in the US, anytime you're disturbing dirt, you have to have this SWIP plan in place, which basically says you have to keep everything that's on the site, all the dirt that's on the site has to stay on the site. The reason for that is number one global pollutant of drinking water is dirt. So making sure that dirt doesn't end up in the stormwater system and becomes undrinkable is what we do. So it's pretty niche. It's a small part of construction, but it's the first thing on the last thing off. On the personal side,
we know you don't like the cold weather, so that's
yeah. I don't. I prefer Florida if I can, but on the personal side, I really try to. I used to put up silos to say my work life, my personal life. I've really tried the last year to integrate that, so I'm just who I am all the time. So I'd like to think that in my personal life, I really focus on my God-given talents and providing that, to be the best husband I can, the best father I can. And really my entrepreneurial journey has been because I want to be that. So really that my personal life is my wife. It's my faith, my wife, and my kids, and spending as much time as I can with them to be a role model to kind of raise them in the faith that, God has put out there for us. And then the thing that not a lot of people know about me, I did put this out there, so some people know now, but a few years ago, I became a really good baker when it comes to Christmas cookies. So I've over the years, I've started to experiment more with different recipes, and I don't know, people are just trying to be nice, but I haven't had anyone tell me that they hate them, and I've been offered money. So if erosion control ever goes down the drain, I got to figure out a way to monetize this cookie business without turning into a 24-hour bakery. So
does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
I got to figure out a way to monetize this cookie business without turning into a 24-hour bakery. So
you have a second career. Now, as I understand it from my research, you might even have a nickname related to that. Is this true?
Yeah, in the office, we all kind of make fun of each other quite a bit. And my COO, my general manager, started calling me Chef Boyardee. So they probably call me other things when I'm not there, but we'll see.
Well, at least you get that one to the face. I mean, yeah, that's a good one though. It made me laugh when I was learning about you. So hey, thanks for sharing that. I'd love to let's start. Where did it start for you that you wanted to become an entrepreneur, or even you thought about that? Like, what I always love to know, like, what did you fall into it, or was it like, man, this is my plan?
So ever since a young age, I've always just kind of been, I've always gone against the grain, and I've always rebelled, and I always tried to just almost contrarian sometimes. And I always thought I was just trying to be unique or different, but I realized I just don't like people telling me what to do. And I don't like being put into a box. I did fine at school, but I'm not someone who can, I'd rather not sit in a classroom and be told what to do. So I've always had that mindset of that freedom. And then, when you're in school, you're in school. It's whatever. There's an end date. But that's when I got in the corporate world, it was like, oh man, like this doesn't really have an end date. And I started realizing that, especially when you're young, you just hustle, like you just work, and you don't have a lot of things tying you down. We were young, and we were married young. And then I had my daughter when we were like 26. And then I was working in Chicago, and I was commuting back and forth an hour and a half each way on average. And I was missing major milestones. And, I was missing my daughter's first steps and her first words. And then my wife's texting it to me, and I'm like, man, like, what am I doing? And I'm sitting in front of this computer screen, moving freight. And at the end of the day, I was like, where's my greater purpose here? So that kind of like put that itch in me to be like, I can't do this. I can't do this forever. And I realized that other people had full control over my schedule, and I was just basically asking for permission to go to the doctor or like go on vacation. And that wasn't that just does not work for me. So that started the spark. My family had a home building business that I've always been involved with, but jumped full time in with after like 2016, which morphed into this.
So you mentioned this particular business you're in now is kind of a small niche, or it's a very niche area. How did you like find a need in the marketplace for it? Like, was that something your family already discovered, or is that something?
So in the home building, they started when I was 19, when I was in college. So
Okay.
my dad just kind of threw me the financials to figure out. So taught myself how to be an accountant and bookkeeper and go through all this stuff. So my cousin, who's my partner now, is the visionary. And he's the one he always has a million ideas. And I'm the integrator. So I'm much more of like hey man, now we have a good partnership now, because I always say like I make all of his dreams come true. And like kind of like Walt and Roy Disney. But Joe had found this product because we were building homes. Joe found this product because you need erosion control when you're building houses, and then realized no one was selling it where we were. So he saw an opportunity and just, how old if we start selling this? And then I tried to shut it down initially, just being like, man, we're already like bad enough at building houses. Let's just keep trying to get better at that versus getting another shiny object. And he didn't listen to me. He just kept going with it. And then by the time I came in full time, it was about 50% revenue from the home building, 50% from erosion control. And we were going to continue with both. And then as I got in, I was like, the home building was just it was so hard to make money with the market we were in, the type of house we were building, and the amount of money that was out at any given time. Where the erosion control, it was just, we ship a truck and it gets paid, or we go out and do a job and we get paid. So it was much easier. So we decided to pull the plug on the home building in 2017.
And never look back, basically.
No.
Wow.
Never look back.
That's really cool. So just to kind of paraphrase, it sounds like one had a lot of moving parts and was complex. And then now the erosion control is a lot more, just sounds like unilateral. You ship, you make money. Is there inventory that's related to this? Like what's the complex?
Yeah. And there's a lot more moving parts on the erosion control side. I would say the swaths of building a house was, you're building one house, you're getting money. You're just getting money from that house.
Yeah.
So if a contractor doesn't turn in an invoice in time and you've already closed the house, we were basically the middleman. So we were getting hit on both sides.
Right.
So I would say there's a lot less moving parts on the home building side.
Wow.
But it was a lot harder to make money the way we were running it, because we were relatively inexperienced. And I'm sure if we got into it now, it would be fine, but I'd rather not. But yeah, on the erosion control side, it's very much We have inventory of a lot of different things. We got way more guys. We have trucks, equipment, all that stuff. So much more than on the home building side. It was basically just two of us. So
Got it. What's the, like, in terms of like a growth plan, is there growth just in what you're doing, or is it maybe like in doing things that complement what you're doing? Like, how do you envision, like, what's kind of your plan in terms of growth? Is there,
we're both and,
yeah,
we're about 8 years into it, but there's still a lot of people that don't know how to handle erosion control. So they're either doing it themselves or handing it to someone who's not qualified to do it. So we're still gaining new customers. We're breaking into new industries. We're offering new services. So we're trying to grow deep with our existing customers and continue to go wide with new customers and industries and that route. So we always try and grow as fast as we can grow well.
sure, sure. I want to circle back because you use the word freedom as part of the reason, like going into your own journey. Like, what's your definition of freedom? Because, like, running a business isn't all. Sometimes it means working really long hours. So I just like, kind of, what's your definition and what kind of feeds your soul?
Yeah, I mean, freedom for me is doing whatever you want to do when you want to do it, but then you're ultimately responsible for the consequences. So I'll use the example when we first started. I could take off whenever I wanted. There were consequences for that, but they were ultimately mine to fix. So if I wanted to take a 2-week vacation in the middle of our busy season when I have responsibilities, I would just make sure I took care of my stuff. In corporate America, you can't always do that. Even if you could take care of your stuff, someone still might say, no, you're not going anywhere, or your consequences, you're losing your job. So freedom for me is, I could decide not to go to the office for the next month if I don't want to. There's of course consequences there. So freedom is basically, I'd say, the ability to fix your own problems on your terms.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about leadership styles and just your own growth as a leader. I know from learning about you that one of the things you felt is that the biggest challenges in terms of leadership hasn't necessarily been external. It's been your own internal, dealing with internal things. Could you talk about that a little bit and how you have developed as a leader?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've told this story a lot, but when we started, none of us knew how to run a business. We were just kind of figuring it out. And our idea of a weekly of a functional meeting was we would sit in a room for 4 hours and yell at each other. And whoever was the loudest or most convincing, we usually did that for that week. And then you came in the next week and we totally changed direction all the time. So I realized pretty quickly about myself that, you always think you're right. So I go into it thinking like, well, I know what's right. So the way I would convince people I was right is to argue and just beat you into submission. So you were either going to believe I was right or you were just too tired to fight and you were going to keep going. And that was killing my relationship with my partners. And it just wasn't, I realized like, it was hard for me to realize like, well, I'm right. How come they just won't be excited about it? So that was the first thing I had to overcome. And with the help of my professional coach, who I'm still with now, she kind of helped me realize like, hey, maybe like you should be a little more of an empathetic leader than just being like, well, I'm right. Just do what I say because I'm right. And just that ego of coming in thinking like, well, I am right. So why don't you just listen to me? And, I still deal with it, but at least now I've had enough experience and situations where I've seen when it pays off to be empathetic and put yourself in someone else's shoes and lead differently with different people. That was a huge thing because I would just it's easy to say like, oh, well, this is my leadership style. And that's pretty selfish because you have different people who need different things at different times. So, I have people on my team who are more emotional and need to be heard more. And and I have other people who I never even need to talk to because they just go out and they just do what they need to get, what needs to get done. And me being touchy feely with them would actually hurt them. So realizing that about myself and adapting my leadership style, depending on the situation, or the person has been huge, but that's a constant struggle because sometimes you revert back to your stress levels. Oh,
Yeah. We don't get this on the internet when you're reading, the LinkedIn posts and stuff, but it's like, a lot of time when you're reading a LinkedIn posts, it's like magic wand and the problem's fixed. But the truth is we're humans and we're constantly striving to improve, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have a bad day or, we react to something when we don't necessarily want to. And so it's something that I think most of us are always trying to live to improve.
no, and that's one thing I struggled to in the beginning was I always thought I needed to look like I needed to be perceived as if I was right and that I had all the answers and I needed to like not show vulnerability because everyone needs to see that leader as like the unshakable, like this guy knows what he's doing. And then kind of realize that sometimes vulnerability builds that credibility with people.
Yeah.
And it helps to hear sometimes when you don't know all the answers. At the same time, I've had it too where, you can't panic in front of people. And that's kind of a lonely position sometimes when like, I can't share everything all the time. Not so much anymore, but in the beginning, when things are like really rough. Sometimes I can't even tell my business partner because I don't want him to freak out because I know I'll get it. I know I'll handle it. I'll know it'll get fixed, but there's no reason, coming home and telling my wife that, I don't know how we're going to make payroll this week. And thankfully we don't have a lot of those issues anymore, but that's been a good lesson that I've had with some of my leaders too, where, even just getting stressed or rattled, like the people who report to you have two options, get stressed and rattled with you because they want to mirror you, or not get stressed and rattled and then risk like, oh, wait, should I be like freaking out right now? Like, are they going to think less of me if I'm not freaking out? So it's a lose-lose situation. And that's a big takeaway that I've pushed to my team because I've had to practice it myself. So
Yeah. So when I use the term reaction-based leadership versus response-based leadership, what's that mean to you? And have you, in your own growth, kind of gone from one to the other?
yeah, so we've got multiple situations, but so for me, reaction is just kind of like, the textbook leader, you're supposed to say, well, everything's my fault. But sometimes stuff isn't your fault. And I think the reaction is well, that's not my fault. Like why he screwed that up. He did
Right.
that. But the reflection is kind of like everyone I think has that snap reaction,
Right.
but that can't be the outward reaction to everyone right off the bat. So I still have that, but then I've always tried to take a step back and be like, okay, BS aside, how is this really my fault? Even if it's not directly my fault, like how am I secondhand at fault? Or how does the environment I've created or not created, or something I've said or not said, or systems we've in place or don't have in place? Like what's the third, fourth, fifth degree of my culpability here? And how can I control that? So the reflective for me is thinking like holistically, whole picture with it is going as extreme as I can. How extreme ownership basically is. How can I put this on me somehow, and what can I put in place to fix it to make sure? And then it does come down to ultimate decision making for some people. Like some people still make decisions that you can't control, but it gives me peace of mind to know, okay, I've done everything I could with the information I had at the time. Because there's nothing worse when something happens and there's something you could have done about it, before, and now someone might not have a job because of it. So
Right. That's good stuff. What do you think is the most challenging thing about running your own business? Is it managing expectations with your partner or interacting with your partner? Is it hiring good people and retaining them? Is it the cash flow of the business? Is it finding good quality business that you can make a fair profit off of? What, in your opinion, what do you feel is one of the bigger challenges?
I'd say the number one reason that businesses fail in general, it's ego. Because and we dealt with this a lot early on. All of the mistakes you'll make, all of the bad decisions you can make are usually tied to ego. So it's either, I want myself in this seat, even though I'm not suited for it. I want to do this because I want to, or I'm not going to look at this problem because I don't want to, because I'm just looking the other way. So ego is huge for us because, especially being owners and employees of the business, because it's really easy to throw your owner hat around, but you might not be best suited. So our structure, for example, Joe, my partner, he's our brand ambassador. So he's running around going to events and he's talking all the time and he's out there at all these government things all the time. He doesn't have any employees that report directly to him. And as an owner of the business, it can be very easy for him to be like, well, this is my kingdom and these are all my employees and I want that recognition. But he understands that's not strength, and he doesn't want that because he's just that's not his gift. That's not what he wants to do. He loves talking to people and he loves being out there and selling. And I think in a lot of businesses that ego gets in the way and causes a lot of issues. And I just gave that one example, but I troll Reddit small business pages a lot and like entrepreneur stuff. And you see people that are just like, oh, I want to start a small bookstore in my community. And it's like, is this a good idea? People are like, no, it's not a good idea. Like there's a reason why there's no more bookstores. but the ego of, but I want a bookstore because I'm passionate about a bookstore and I'm passionate about books and I want it, but it's like, that doesn't make it a good idea. And I think so many people, restaurants especially, like they don't want feedback. When a new restaurant opens, nobody wants to hear this wasn't good. This wasn't good because this is my life dream. And I don't want you to crap on my life dream. And that's ego. So I think ego leads to failure more than anything.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
Average is not invited. Not if you're holding your company off-site in Las Vegas. We aren't on friendly terms with the bare minimum, and unenthusiastic is uninvited. Las Vegas's creative energy and world-class hospitality want to bring your company off-site to crazy new heights. That's why fear-based leadership is afraid of Vegas, and boring won't be there, but it will be watching the meeting recordings later. Plan for the extraordinary at vegasmeansbusiness.com.
And that's ego. So I think ego leads to failure more than anything.
It's funny. I have a short story. I have many stories like this, but it just jumps out when you said that. Many years ago, when I had my CPA practice, I had a guy approach me, came to me, a potential client. He said, "Hey, I want to start a beer distributor company. I'm going to potentially buy this license from someone that was making beer in Mexico." And I said, "Okay." I said, "So where are you going to get the money?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to get it from my retirement." I said, "Okay." I said, "Have you really thought about how much it costs to run a distribution? I mean, you're going to have to buy trucks. You're going to have to think about routes. You're going to have to hire people." And about halfway into the conversation, he says to me, he says, "Look, I don't want to work with a guy like you. You're very negative and you're not helping my cause." And I said, "I'm sorry. I'm just trying to ask you questions that you should be asking yourself." And needless to say, he never hired me and I wouldn't have worked with him anyway. But to your point, like you see that I've had pleasure, unfortunate of seeing that a lot where people don't want to, because their ego gets in the way, they don't want to a lot of times be told their bookstore won't work, or, when you ask them questions that don't necessarily add up, that ego really can lead you down bad paths.
I mean, and even not wanting feedback as an employee, like if you're not coachable and you're not open, and that kills so many people where you just see the culture now where it's like, everyone just wants to blame somebody else for something bad that happened to them. And it's like, maybe, but why don't you look in the mirror and figure out what you could have done different? And having that, putting your ego aside is a superpower, I would say.
Yeah.
So,
how do you in your organization create that accountability at all levels? Do you do anything special?
we run EOS.
Okay.
So from Traction. So that's kind of the built-in, I call it the built-in bad guy, because it's always the system that we can go back to. We've taken it a lot further because EOS is great, but it does miss in some areas.
Yeah.
For example, they say you should only have a quarterly conversation with your people. I think that's not frequent enough, because by the time you get to a quarter, if you wait a quarter to tell somebody they're not doing well, it's usually too late. So we've implemented monthly check-ins where, and I got this from a speaker, but we basically ask the question, or we tell them every month, hey, knowing everything I know about you now, I would still hire you today. In the same vein, they grade us too and say, knowing everything I know about you and the company, I would still accept this job today. And we have it broken down by, our core values and what that means and all those different things, whether or not they're measuring up and we're measuring up. And that way it's in real time, because when you hire somebody, if it's a scale of 1 to 10, you hire someone when they're a 9 out of 10. But usually when they drop to an 8, no one says anything. It might be, they were late once, and it's like, oh, they were late, but it's not that big of a deal. But it still would have been something, had you known about it, you wouldn't have hired him if you knew this guy was going to be late all the time or something. And no one has that first conversation. So rather than have the conversation when they drop from 9 to 8, they wait till they're a 6 and it's too late. And you put them on a performance plan, and performance plans usually don't work because it's too late. So we put in that accountability monthly. So you might have 20 check-ins where you're a 10 out of 10. And the thing you drop to a 9, everyone's like, whoa, okay. Hey man, just, I wish you would have spoke up more in that meeting, or I wish you would have brought this to me sooner. when it's not a big deal and having that difficult conversation as soon as possible rather than wait 3 months. So we started that last year, and I think our guys really like it because it helps us put a pulse on, when something's going wrong. We built a culture of trust where they can bring it up in real time versus, and at a minimum, they got to wait a month to bring it up versus 3 months or a year or never.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to backpedal a little bit because that was one of my areas I wanted to go into is EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a book written by Gino Wickman, Traction. Now they have a whole methodology. When you guys made the decision to go in the EOS direction, first question I have, did you self-implement or did you hire someone to help you through that process?
Yeah. I mean, we're the typical story. I think everyone tries to self-implement first.
Yeah.
And then we picked and choose what we liked and then tossed out what we didn't and then realized that wasn't going to work. We had an implementer come in for the free 90-minute meeting. And, we were so toxic at that point. He came in and he read the room perfectly. He called us each out on the stuff we were doing. And we were just like, oh man, we have to use this guy no matter what it costs. So we did use an implementer, but our goal, for me, for coaching especially, is you shouldn't be perennially attached to somebody all the time. So my intent was always to get to the point where we can run it ourselves and get off it. So we used him for about a year, and then we used him a couple other times after the fact. But the intent was never just to always have an implementer.
Do you mind sharing his name just to give him a little plug?
Yeah, Justin Most. He is. He's very active on LinkedIn. He's like a keynote. I think he spoke at the EOS conference this year as the keynote. So he's a rock star.
Yeah. How do you say his last name again?
Most. Maust.
Okay, cool. I'll let him know we plugged him. I think it's cool that he right away read the room, kind of saw something you could instantly see value. That's pretty cool. Now with EOS, I'm assuming, is it fair to say you were a multi-million-dollar company when you started down the EOS path? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Okay. What were the immediate benefits, or what benefits did you see once you put I don't want to make this totally about EOS, but I'm just curious. Yeah. What are the benefits that you saw most, in the shortest amount of time?
Just the immediate accountability.
Okay.
And like I said, the built-in bad guy. So where every week we come in, and it was the Wild West. You could come in and say whatever you wanted, and there was no system. Hey, so this put in okay, we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it, and we're going to do it. No one can come in anymore and just start saying, I'm not doing that anymore. So that alone was 80-20 rule. That was our biggest issue. So that just almost immediately, and then EOS is about checking your ego. And that was the biggest thing, because we were three egos that, we're three co-presidents. And I mean, you see all the countries that are run well with three presidents. So.
Okay. That's good stuff. Thanks for sharing iOS. I want to switch gears now, because I know you've also implemented the profit first methodology at one point. I don't know if you still are. Can we talk about that? When did you introduce that? What are some benefits you've got out of it, and just how you guys utilize it now?
That's another area where EOS misses, is on the financial side.
I agree. Totally. Yeah.
And the operating system is great as far as EOS goes, but if you don't have money or you don't manage your money well, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. They just gloss over it. It kind of scratches my head a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah. The reason we got into it was because we ran into cash flow issues, and we realized we were doing so well and our bottom line was good, but then there's no cash in the bank, and didn't want to go through that again. So, I mean, again, I think the greatest superpower you can have is to learn lessons without feeling pain. But that's not typically how we do things. So we had a big cash flow issue, and I realized we can't keep living like this. So read profit first, and then just immediately it was we need to do this. And it was incredible how quickly, and it helps when you're a multi-million-dollar company because you have cash coming in.
Yeah.
It was incredible how fast we saw immediate, we built a reserve account of several $100,000 pretty quickly.
Wow.
And yeah, it's one thing when you have, multi-millions of dollars coming in annually revenue wise, but it happened so much faster than, and I'm sure it's a scale thing, but I was shocked how fast it helped us quickly. So,
wow. Yeah. So just for the benefit of the audience, if folks out there don't know, it's kind of a cash management system, I guess I'd call it, where as you take money in, you allocate it into typically different bank accounts. Could be you set aside money for taxes, 20% for operating expenses, 20% for payroll, 20% for profit, things like that. How involved is your methodology? Was your methodology in terms of allocating monies to different accounts? Did you?
Yeah. So in the beginning, you have to do all the analysis and figure out exactly where your money needs to go.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very detail oriented with that. So I spent a ton of time, like probably too much detail, but now it's super simple. Like every dollar just comes in, and it keeps you disciplined to know like how much you should be spending on your OpEx, because people don't realize that too. Again, getting into ego, where it's like, oh, 95% of my money goes to OpEx. And it's like, well, if 95% of your money is going to your operating expenses, you're probably running a bad business, because 95% probably shouldn't be going to OpEx, especially if you have other expenses, and maybe so, but whatever. So now it's super simple. The money just, we have the allocation percentages, and we always have a rock of trying to lower it. So we're spending less on OpEx, and we can put more money in reserve funds and stuff like that. But yeah, once you understand the concept and get it, the book obviously wants you to keep like the strict. Well, we don't do it strict, like, but once you get the feel of it, and the whole point is to have financial literacy over your business and know where your cash is going. And once you achieve that, like I got to the point where I had the pulse of the cash flow, and I just knew by feel how things were going to turn out week by week. So,
yeah. I mean, it's so cool. I love hearing you say, like, using the example of 95% operating expenses, because the only way you could really know that is if you were looking at your financials. And sometimes by the time you get your financial data, it's like a month later or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So if you could just visually be going, oh my gosh, this allocation isn't making sense, or I'm blowing through my cash way more than my percentage, just gives you such visibility on how to manage your business. You mentioned a rock/goal for the audience. A rock is comparable to a goal. One of your rocks are, how do you get your operating expenses down? Is that what I think you said that you try to always?
Yeah, we always have a standing of just trying to lower operating expenses. So, and it changes depending on what it is, and we'll take on different initiatives to do that.
Okay. Are you looking at expense line items and just kind of going, well, this is a proportion is too high, or like, I'm just curious what your methodology is.
So it started like early. I mean, it's 80-20. So like early when we were first doing it, we were like, oh, there's a ton of low hanging fruit here. And it was freight for us. So it's easy to go to freight and just start using different brokers and tracking it better. But now we're squeezing what we can now. But now we're working on capital velocity and how fast we can move money through, and getting paid quicker by customers, and stretching out terms with vendors to try and turn our dollar more often, so we're holding on to it as long as possible. So again, just keeps evolving as we get better and better.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you mentioned early on in the show about you use a coach to improve on something, and then you still use the same person. Feel free, if you want to mention the person's name, you're welcome to do that. Can you kind of tell me there's a certain level of humility in using a coach, so I appreciate that. How did that shape your personal and professional life? Like, what have benefits, other than one you mentioned, has come out from working with a coach?
Yeah. So when I came into the business, we had like every small business problem you could possibly have, and I wasn't coping well. And I was considering leaving, and then realized, I told the story multiple times, but went to my dad thinking he would kind of be like, oh, it's fine. Like, you'll figure it out. And he kind of slapped me in the face and was like, no, like, just then leave. Like, don't do it. Not everyone's supposed to do this. It doesn't make you a bad person, but like, don't do it if you don't want to do it, but then get out, because you're doing a disservice to everybody else still involved. So at that point I got mad, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to figure this out anyway. And I realized I needed to talk to someone, because otherwise I was just going to spiral, or I was going to quit, and I didn't know when to get the opportunity again. So I found a coaching service who, matches you with a few different coaches, and then you pick one. And, she was awesome, because, she takes the faith aspect, which is important for me, because I need to integrate. So she was great with business, faith, and personal, all integrated together. And yeah, it was just tackling one problem at a time. It was because it was a therapy session at first, where it's like, what are you dealing with? And I'm like, what am I not dealing with? And she's the one who introduced us to Traction. And, it's based on me saying like, well, this is what we do every week. And she's like, have you guys read this? And then gave that to my partners, and they were like, oh yeah, like, let's run with this. So really, it was just tackling one problem at a time, because we had every problem, and it would have been impossible for us to tackle everything. And just being okay with only tackling one thing at a time, and not worrying about, I didn't like that guys weren't wearing their uniforms, but maybe that wasn't the hill I was going to die on today, because I had other stuff I needed to fix. So
right. That's a big one, actually, is kind of picking your battles. Like, knowing when something's important enough to deal with versus when you kind of let it slide or else it'll eat you up. Is that part of that evolution for you? Is that from the coaching or is that just from your own kind of worldly experience?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
good. Cause like for me, I'm someone who just wants to get it all done right now.
Yeah.
And like time be damned, effort be damned. Like, let's figure it out and do this because we have to. But with her, and it doesn't mean like you're sweeping the problems under the rug. Like it was always in my mental notebook of like, okay, I need to play the long game on this one, and I have a plan for it, but it's not gonna. The plan right now is to do nothing. So it's never ignoring the problems, but it is prioritizing. Again, I was going back to 80-20. What's going to make the biggest impact right now?
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
It's never ignoring the problems, but it is prioritizing. Again, I was going back to 80-20. What's going to make the biggest impact right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay, I got two more things I want to talk with you about before we wrap up. You guys are an Inc. 5000 company. I think that's pretty cool. That's an honor. What do you kind of see as your guys' evolution? Like, what's your next step? Where, as much as isn't confidential, what's your guys' next step? Where do you see you taking the company?
Yeah, I mean, we've always said we try and grow as fast as we can grow well, and there's considerations for both of us in how we want to do that, and we don't want to grow so fast that we lose our culture, because that's the first thing to go when you do grow fast is you're desperate to put people in seats, and you might not vet as close as you can. So the Inc. 5000 list is awesome. At the same time, I saw a meme the other day that was it was like the Inc. out of cash 5000, because so many companies are growing so fast that they just can't support it. So really, that next iteration for us has really been honing in on operations and expenses and profit, because revenue's vanity, but profit's sanity, and
Right.
Cash flow is king. So that's the next iteration for us. Is like I don't care so much about, everyone says growth, and you'll think revenue, but like that's so much more to me. Like if we're growing on the profit side, if we're growing in our people and we're getting better people, all of those come together to create. Usually the revenue is a byproduct of that. And I'd rather have more revenue when we're run well and we don't bleed off profit. Because we had a couple of years early where we grew super fast and we grew, double digit, and we made less money than we did the year before. And it's like, well, crap, I worked a lot harder this year and we made less money. So we've really honed in on operations and making sure we're doing things sound. So continuing to do that's that next iteration.
Man, I can't tell you, like, the last 3 minutes of what you just said, there's so much wisdom there. That's like 30 years of experience. I know you're not even that old, but there's so much experience there in that, we get so caught up in building revenue, that there's so many shades of gray in between just the revenue that are about how you grow. It's a quality team. It's good processes. It's great cash management. It's monitoring your expenses. There's just so much more than just that one thing that we all tend to look at.
Hard lessons learned in real time. So.
Yeah. Okay, here's where I want to wrap up with. If you can, I'd love to hear just 3 tips or thoughts that entrepreneurs can kind of take away from your learning journey. You've already dropped a ton, and you're welcome to go back into some things we talked about, but I'd love to end on that note.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I've relied so much on ChatGPT the past few months, especially in, helping me learn more about myself and do my job and get better at it and get more efficient at it. So I share a lot of information with you. So as soon as you asked me, what are the 3 things? And I said, hey, knowing everything you know about me, what are the 3 things that I would say about this? And of course, it's like, it's dead on. And number 1 is it's a purpose-driven leadership. And I think that's really where I found my peace and kind of like my life integration. And when I felt like I wasn't separating all the different areas of my life, is like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I know God has made me good at certain things. He's given me skill set, and there's things I love to do and there's things I don't like to do. And leading into that with that purpose of, I'm here to help other people realize their God-given gifts and talents. So everything when I try and talk to people, every time I try and get out there, I'm just trying to give the advice to the version of me that needed it when I was, I work in high schools, I work in colleges, whatever I needed to hear when I was 16 or what I needed to hear when I was 21 or what I needed to hear when I was 30, that's my purpose. So finding that purpose makes it so much easier when terrible things happen, like you can't make payroll, which leads into the next one, resilience and adaptability. You have to be able to compartmentalize and deal with, like, if you have that purpose and you know what you're working towards, when those horrible things happen, you can get through it. So it was always a roller coaster, and it's still a roller coaster, but early on, especially, something amazing would happen and like clockwork, you're just waiting for something horrible to happen. And it always did. So having that resilience and adaptability to just be able to constantly get punched in the face over and over, developing that helps, but you need that purpose of, for me, I wanted that freedom. I wanted it. So for me, it was worth it. And then number 3, especially in the last year, this has come up in investing in people and relationships. I ran the business the first 5 or 6 years with the head down, and just, I could have been in Excel sheets all day, every day. And I was not in the community. I didn't have any resources. I didn't know there were so many available resources to help small businesses and entrepreneurs out there, because I was just figuring out, I was like, I need to figure this out myself. And in the last year, I've really invested in getting out in the community and just knowing as many people as I can know. And I hate networking with an agenda of, hi, I'm DJ, buy my silver product, because I think that's disingenuous and it feels icky to me. So I've gone into these events just saying, I want nothing more than to know who you are and know your story, and I'll tell you my story. And if I can help you in any way, let me know. With the idea that, all of that will come full circle. So that's where opportunities are made, because I'm not an idea guy. The more people the bigger your network is, those opportunities will come to you. So had I known all those 3 things on day 1 and had it developed, it would have been a lot less painful along the way.
Yeah. One thing I want to add that you kind of started our discussion with early on, the fact that you're the integrator and your partner is the visionary. I think that's pretty cool that you kind of know your roles and what you guys are really good at. And this is another EOS thing, but it kind of plays into where you know what you're really good at and maybe what is not necessarily in your sweet spot. So I think that's kind of a cool thing too.
Oh yeah, I know that I'm not because I try to shut this down, but I know that about myself. So anytime he comes up with new ideas, even though I want to shut him down, I've had to discipline myself to say, no, I have to listen to this and let this play out before because my instincts are not always right, despite what I think.
Despite your ego. Okay, man. Hey, it was awesome talking with you. I'm going to share your website. Your website is erosionconstructionsolutions.com. I'll say it one more time, and I'll put it in the show notes at thinktyler.com. Erosionconstructionsolutions.com. If people wanted to reach out to you, is that the spot to go, or would you like them to go anywhere else?
For the business, yeah, go there. And then it's a landing page. We have a services side and then the product side. And then for me, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, thanks for sharing your story and your journey. I mean, you've got a lot of, feel like we only scratched the surface of what we could have talked about, but there was a lot of wisdom in the discussion.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, man. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
That's all for this episode of Think Business with Tyler. But we have plenty more resources to help you in your pursuit of business excellence on our website at thinktyler.com. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode of the show, feel free to reach out to us on social media at think_Tyler. We look forward to helping you think life, think success, and think business.
Electric